Los Angeles, one of the most iconic cities in the world, known for its bright lights and big dreams, was struck by an overwhelming tragedy. Giant fires destroyed everything in their path, leaving thousands of families homeless and an entire city in ruins. Have you ever imagined what you would do if your life was reduced to ashes in the snap of a finger? What happened in Los Angeles is not an isolated case. It is merely a reflection of what is happening in many parts of the world, where natural disasters are becoming more frequent and intense. And the big question is, are we preparing for what comes next? The Bible has already warned us about times like these. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 7, Jesus said there will be earthquakes in different places. These earthquakes, fires, storms, and heat waves that we see now are not just natural catastrophes. They are signs of something greater, something that is about to happen. Are we really living the fulfillment of biblical prophecies? The end times are closer than we think. These disasters are not mere coincidences. The earth is in agony, and every new fire, earthquake, and extreme climatic phenomenon seems to be a warning from God. And what are we doing to prepare for the tribulation that is approaching? What will you do when the world around you starts to fall apart? In this video, we will explore how these signs are manifesting before our eyes and how biblical prophecies are more alive than ever. Let's reflect on the fragility of life and the urgency of strengthening our faith in the face of the chaos surrounding us. Are you ready to face the spiritual reality behind the disasters we are seeing? Subscribe now, leave your like, and share this video with your friends. Don't miss the next chapter, where we will discuss how to spiritually prepare for the final times. Fires in Los Angeles. Historic disaster. Los Angeles, the famous city of angels, has always been known for its glow and glamour. However, in recent days, this glow was replaced by a thick curtain of smoke and a sky tinged with red. The wildfires that struck the Los Angeles area reached historic levels. The fire spread with astonishing speed, consuming everything in its path. The wild nature and urbanization of Los Angeles tragically intertwined, resulting in an unprecedented disaster. In Los Angeles County, the flames have already claimed the lives of at least 10 people, but authorities fear the actual death toll is much higher. The fire has been relentlessly advancing, hitting entire neighborhoods and leaving behind nothing but ash and rubble. Can you imagine what it would be like to lose everything overnight? How many people are now facing the anguish of losing their homes, their memories, their dreams? Strong winds, which are common this time of year, turned what could have been a controllable fire into an uncontrollable hell. Every spark, every flame that quickly spread is a reminder of how vulnerable we are in the face of the immense force of nature. As we have seen in other catastrophes, destruction comes without warning, and many times, it is impossible to contain the tragedy. Can you feel the impact of losing a home? Imagine the challenge of starting over from zero, but the worst was yet to come. As the flames advanced, authorities found themselves racing against time to save what was left. Even so, it wasn't enough. Every area affected by the fires had to be evacuated immediately, with the fear that the situation would worsen with each passing minute. The city, which is usually a symbol of dreams and prosperity, now lived a collective nightmare, where entire families left behind everything they had in search of safety. If you think this situation was impactful, wait until you see what happened next. With the death toll rising and the fire spreading out of control, a scene of desperation began to unfold on the streets of Los Angeles. The mass evacuations brought to light the fragility of human life and how quickly everything can change. But in the midst of this chaos, stories of heroes emerged. It was not just firefighters and rescue teams, but ordinary citizens who, using their own resources, tried to save what they could. Have you ever thought about what you would do in such a critical moment? How would you react if you saw your neighborhood being devoured by the fire? This kind of catastrophe is not just a local tragedy. It has global repercussions. What if the response wasn't adequate? What happens when an entire city is destroyed and the emergency responses are not enough? How do you think the government should prepare better to avoid this kind of chaos? Leave your comment here. Now, imagine the impact of 4 main fires destroying over 10,000 structures. Yes, you read that right. 10,000 structures. Houses, shops, schools, churches. Everything in a matter of hours. Entire communities were reduced to ashes. Where there was life, now there are only ruins. The images of Los Angeles in ruins are almost impossible to believe, but they were photographed and broadcast to the whole world. How would you feel if you were one of the affected by this destruction? How would you care for your family in such a situation? Amid all this, curfews were imposed to prevent the situation from worsening. Authorities were at a loss, trying to control the looting that began to happen. In times of crisis, desperation leads people to make reckless decisions. When chaos takes over, people lose track of what is right and wrong, and the line between need and opportunism becomes very thin. Imagine having to flee in the middle of chaos, leaving everything behind. What would you take with you? Those who managed to escape left behind not only their homes, but also their stories, their memories, and the pain of knowing that life as they knew it would never be the same. The question remains, how do humans respond to desperation? What do we do when we are faced with a force as powerful as the destruction of everything we love? What would you do if your life was reduced to nothing in the snap of a finger? These fires are not just a tragedy, but a reflection of something greater. The intensity of the disasters we are seeing around the world is growing, and we are beginning to realize that nature, with its uncontrollable power, makes no distinction between social classes or wealth. We are all vulnerable to nature's fury. If you think the worst has already happened, get ready. The next chapter brings an even more shocking reality. With the increasing destruction, the emergency response began to show its limitations. Significant budget cuts, amounting to $17 million, directly affected the ability to combat the fires effectively. Do you understand the importance of having adequate resources in critical moments? How can the government respond to the high demand in such a moment? Helicopters and water tankers, essential tools in fighting fires, were being used in a limited way. Imagine the situation: a giant fire, with flames reaching kilometers away, and rescue teams struggling to cover all affected areas with resources far below what is needed. The feeling of helplessness in the face of the magnitude of the tragedy is overwhelming. It becomes clear here that no matter how much technology and logistics have advanced, resources are limited. In moments like this, human lives are priceless, but unfortunately, financial resources and political limitations impose barriers. The ability to respond to the emergency was hampered by decisions made before the disaster. Do you understand the impact political decisions can have in critical moments? Imagine what it would be like without adequate support in a time like this. However, history is not limited to numbers and reports. It is reflected in people, in the heroes who emerge when the system fails. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to emerge as a hero in such a critical moment? These catastrophic events make us reflect on our fragility in the face of nature and life. They are signs, which we often don't understand immediately, but which can serve as a warning about the times we are living in. And what comes next? What can we expect in a scenario so pointed out by biblical prophecies? The answer to this question leads us to a deeper context, which goes beyond fires and natural disasters. It connects us with the idea of a world changing before our eyes, and that these events are just part of a bigger plan. What do you think is behind all this? Get ready, because the next topic will bring even more revelations about what today's times truly mean. Destruction and mass evacuations. Los Angeles, which until then was synonymous with sun, beaches, and freedom, now became an apocalyptic scene, marked by destruction and chaos. The four main fires that devastated the region showed no mercy. Within days, more than 10,000 structures were consumed by the fire. Homes, schools, hospitals, and even important tourist attractions, once icons of the city, became mere piles of rubble. What once was home to thousands of people was now nothing but ruins. How would you feel if we lived in a world where what we have today can be lost in the snap of a finger? No matter how hard you work to achieve what you have, everything can be reduced to ashes without warning. Images of the destruction quickly spread, shocking the whole world. Streets that would normally be full of cars and people were empty, with the silence broken only by the sound of sirens and the fires still burning in the distance. Communities that were once prosperous and lived in relative peace were now immersed in the mourning and pain of losing everything. Imagine if your neighbor, your neighborhood, your school, everything was reduced to ashes in a short period of time. How would you deal with that? Evacuation was the only option to save as many lives as possible. But like many tragedies, it wasn't just about leaving home and going to a safe place. The escape was filled with difficulties, moments of anguish, and even tough choices. A curfew was imposed by authorities to prevent the chaos from escalating further. Looting became a cruel reality, with some people taking advantage of the panic to loot stores and break into abandoned houses. As human beings, we are tested in our actions, and the crisis brought out the darker side of many. Have you ever thought about what you would do if you were in the middle of such a chaos? Would we be able to act with integrity, or would we be influenced by desperation? It's a frightening moment, not only because of the physical destruction, but also the emotional devastation. Imagine the scene of people fleeing in panic, not knowing what they would find upon returning. Their homes, their memories, all at risk. Some might even think, will I return to find what's left of everything I built? This sense of irreparable loss goes beyond physical destruction. It reflects how a person feels in the face of the fragility of their own existence. How does one live a day after seeing their life, their home, reduced to nothing? Moreover, the loss is not just of material goods. Imagine the suffering of those who lost loved ones, friends, or, in some cases, their entire support network. Evacuations, although necessary, do not resolve the trauma generated by a tragedy of this magnitude. For those who lost everything, life would never be the same. How do you rebuild when everything you knew is gone? What would you do to start over from zero? And we cannot forget the stories of resilience and courage that emerge in these difficult times. Some residents, using their security cameras, managed to monitor the approach of the flames and make quick decisions to save what they could. In an imminent danger situation, these actions can be the difference between life and death. Would you be able to make such quick and crucial decisions if your life and your family's life were at risk? The city of Los Angeles was unrecognizable. Instead of the starry glow and the bustling streets, the scenes that took over TV screens and phones were of ashes and ruins. The mass evacuations, though necessary, represented the loss of a lifestyle, a way of living that would never return to the same. What would you do if you were the last to leave the place you called home? What would you take with you if you could only choose one thing? The impacts of this tragedy go far beyond what was physically destroyed. Evacuations are not just a logistical movement. They mark a turning point in people's lives. For many, the fire did not just destroy material goods, but also dreams and a sense of security. These families now live with a burden. The burden of trying to rebuild their lives, but with the constant shadow of the memory that everything could be lost again. Does it already feel like a science fiction movie? But what if I told you the next days could bring an even more impactful reality? Now, with the evacuations ending and the city starting to reorganize, the question remains, will the authorities be able to handle the gravity of the situation? And the emergency response? What happens when the help is insufficient? In the next topic, we will explore the limitations directly affecting the ability to respond to disasters of this magnitude. Get ready, because what comes next will make you reflect on the real capacity of our institutions in times of crisis. Don't forget to leave your like if this video is making you reflect on what would happen if this were to happen to you. Now, let's understand how limitations in emergency response impact the effectiveness of rescue teams and the lessons we can learn from this. Limitations in emergency response. As the city of Los Angeles was sinking into chaos, another critical factor began to gain attention: the authorities' inability to cope with the magnitude of the disaster due to significant budget cuts. Imagine the situation: fire consuming everything around you, rescue teams fighting the flames to save what can still be saved, and at the same time, an invisible but devastating obstacle: financial resources, which are insufficient to guarantee a quick and effective response. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to lack resources in a time of crisis? Imagine you need urgent help and you can't receive it because of a lack of resources. How does that make you feel? The government of Los Angeles, like many other cities around the world, has been facing financial difficulties, and one of the biggest impacts was a cut of $17 million in the budget allocated for disaster response. Imagine what could happen in an emergency situation if essential resources to fight the fire were missing. Empty helipads, water tankers without fuel, and helicopters essential for fighting fires were unavailable when they were most needed. These are the direct effects of a lack of investment in vital disaster response infrastructure. The situation became even more distressing when authorities were forced to prioritize higher-risk areas, leaving others behind. Every decision made affected lives, when the priority should be saving lives. How do people feel knowing that there are not enough resources to cover all the needs? The rescue teams tirelessly tried to fight the fires with what they had, but with every passing minute, the tragedy became more irreversible. To understand the gravity of the problem, imagine that, in such a moment, the use of helicopters and water tankers becomes essential. These resources are the key tools to control large-scale fires. But what happens when these tools are limited or, in the worst-case scenario, unavailable? Without these planes and helicopters, fighting the fire becomes an unequal battle. How long would it take to put out a fire without the essential tools? The fire advances with unstoppable force, and with every minute lost, more properties are consumed. The budget cuts, which resulted in the limitation of using these vital tools, demonstrate a cruel reality. When a city faces a large-scale disaster, the lack of investment can be the difference between saving lives and losing more than we can count. How can a city like Los Angeles, which is known for its wealth and innovation, become so vulnerable? What happens when emergency infrastructure is not a priority? And the worst part is knowing that while the fire consumed the cities, there weren't enough resources for an adequate response. Many areas, including densely populated neighborhoods, were left exposed to risk because the rescue teams were spread across the fire hotspots that had already caused the majority of the destruction. How many lives could have been saved if the budget had been better managed? How many families could have been spared a tragic fate if more resources were available? Responding to a disaster is not simple, but it should be more efficient, more immediate. When tragedy knocks on the door, swift action is needed. But in Los Angeles, resources were limited, and the city faced the consequences of this scarcity with a sense of helplessness that quickly spread among citizens and emergency workers. What should we do to prevent this from happening again? This scenario reveals a truth we all need to recognize. Disaster preparedness is not just about equipment or personnel, but about investing in infrastructure and public policies that pay due attention to the most urgent needs. Do you believe cities are really prepared to face large-scale disasters? What can we do to improve this preparation? In the next few minutes, we will talk about how, despite all the limitations, anonymous heroes emerged amid this tragedy. These heroes, often not paid or recognized as they should be, were crucial in saving lives and properties. Have you ever thought about who your hero would be in a moment like this? How would you react if the world around you was in flames? The heroism story we will tell next shows how the courage and determination of ordinary citizens can, in fact, make a difference when the system fails. Security cameras and the quick intervention of people willing to risk their own lives were responsible for saving some homes that otherwise would have been consumed by the flames. Are you ready to discover the actions of heroes that emerge when we need them the most? Now, get ready to discover how, in Hollywood, amid the devastation, stories of courage emerge that cannot be ignored. The strength of the human spirit goes beyond what we imagine, and sometimes, it only takes a simple gesture to change the fate of many people. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next heroic story that changed the fate of a burning neighborhood. The next topic will provide a deep reflection on how the actions of citizens, even without the support of an efficient response system, were able to make all the difference in moments of crisis. Let's now dive into the story of anonymous heroes who, with courage and speed, prevented even greater tragedies from occurring. Heroism stories in Hollywood. Amidst the absolute chaos that took over Los Angeles, stories emerged that reminded us of the best of humanity: courage, altruism, and dedication. In Hollywood, where glamour and spotlights usually shine, a much more real and vital kind of heroism began to stand out. It wasn't an action movie, but reality, where ordinary citizens were becoming heroes, risking their own lives to save what they could. Sometimes, heroism doesn't come from trained professionals, but from ordinary people who, in the face of adversity, make extraordinary choices. One of the most emotional stories happened in the heart of Hollywood, where the flames were quickly approaching homes and businesses. The fire showed no mercy and spread ferociously. Many residents, already panicking from the advancing flames, were forced to evacuate, leaving everything behind. But amidst the rush, some citizens were not willing to just flee. They were determined to do something to save their homes, and even those of their neighbors. What would you do when the fire is approaching your home and you know help won't arrive in time? What would you do? Technology, often seen merely as something for leisure, became a key ally. Security cameras, typically installed for monitoring and protection against theft, were now being used for a much bigger purpose: detecting the fire's advance and allowing residents to make quick decisions. The cameras, connected to remote monitoring systems, provide a live view of the situation, enabling people who might already be in a temporary shelter or moving away from danger to still take action. And that's exactly what happened. At one home, a resident, who was a few blocks away, saw through the security camera that the fire was quickly approaching his property. With a sense of urgency, he contacted his neighbors and other residents of the street, warning them of the imminent danger. But it didn't stop there. With the help of a few friends, he organized a real rescue operation, using garden hoses and other makeshift tools to try to control the flames. What would be necessary for you to act in a moment of despair? Would you be able to stay calm and brave when facing a disaster of this magnitude? As the fire approached, every second counted. And as improbable as it seemed, this intervention, by a miracle, managed to save the house that was on the front line of the fire. This story is just one of many that happened during that period of destruction, but it reflects the best of humanity in times of crisis. It wasn't the presence of firefighters or large resources that prevented a house from being destroyed, but the immediate and fearless action of ordinary people who refused to stand idly by. Do you know someone who has done something extraordinary in a crisis situation? What else do you think we can do to prepare for scenarios like this? Leave your comment here and share your opinion with us. The most remarkable part of all of this is the fact that these stories of heroism occurred in a scenario where the emergency response system was completely overwhelmed. It was easy to see that, while the government and authorities were struggling to manage an unprecedented situation, it was individual action, the ability to think quickly and work together, that made all the difference. As sirens and ambulance sounds mixed with warning cries and howling winds, these people decided they wouldn't wait. They took charge of the situation, showing that the true strength of a community is not only in its resources, but in unity and the spirit of solidarity. Have you ever felt helpless in a crisis? How can we better prepare to act as a community in times of disaster? But it wasn't just the security cameras that helped prevent tragedies. A set of quick and well-coordinated actions among neighbors, friends, and even strangers willing to help one another became a reflection of the true essence of what it means to be human. Being there when someone needs you. People were fighting the flames with everything they had, using hoses, buckets of water, or even trying to block the path of the flames with improvised objects. What would be necessary for you if you faced such an impact in your life? Would they do the same for you? But the battle against the fire wasn't just physical. It was psychological as well. The fear of losing everything, of seeing what had been built with so much effort being destroyed in an instant, is something no one would want to face. Yet, for these citizens, fear didn't stop them. On the contrary, fear was the fuel that drove them to act heroically. They knew that if they did nothing, their homes, their memories, and their lives could be consumed by the fire. Have you ever thought about how you would feel if your life was immediately in danger? How do you find the courage to act? Hollywood stories show us that heroism can arise in the most unexpected moments. It's not about superheroes with capes or special abilities, but ordinary people who, seeing a tragedy about to happen, come together and make a difference. What if I told you that heroism could be all around you? Do you know someone who stood out in a crisis moment like this? These stories, though smaller in scale compared to large disasters, are equally significant and reflect the light of hope that sometimes can shine even in the darkest hours. They teach us that when the community unites and acts with determination, even the most desperate situations can be overcome. In the next topic, we will explore how these fires connect to a larger context, an apocalyptic context. What do these disasters really mean for the future of humanity? Get ready for the next part of this video, where we will discuss how these catastrophes are signs of something much larger. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now so you won't miss the next chapter of this impactful journey. The apocalyptic context of the fires. The fires that devastated Los Angeles are not just local tragedies, but also have a deeper meaning that connects with the end times, as described in the scriptures. As we observe the increase in intensity and frequency of these natural disasters, one question arises. Is this the beginning of the fulfillment of end times prophecies? Have you stopped to think how current events connect with what is written in the scriptures? When we see disasters of such magnitude happening in such a large area, the connection with the words of Jesus in Matthew, chapter 24, becomes increasingly clear. In Matthew, chapter 24, verse 7, Jesus speaks about wars, famine, and earthquakes, saying that these would be the beginning of birth pains. Now, imagine these wildfires as a symbol of the pains to come. Every fire, every natural disaster, can be seen as a harbinger of something greater that is coming. The destruction of a city like Los Angeles, one of the world's largest metropolises, makes us reflect on the impact of global disasters on the future of humanity. Do you think the world is preparing enough for what is to come? When we look at the signs, we realize that the destruction, as we are witnessing now, fits perfectly into an apocalyptic context. It's not just about fires or isolated natural disasters. They are part of a sequence of events described in the scriptures, where signs of a ruined land begin to appear. The Bible speaks of times of anguish and destruction, but it also offers hope to those who remain steadfast in faith. Have you stopped to think about what is really happening in the world today and how it connects with the prophecies? Are we living through the fulfillment of an era of calamities, as predicted in the scriptures? These events challenge us to reflect on what is really happening on our planet. The increase in the frequency and intensity of disasters like fires, hurricanes, earthquakes, and others places us at a critical point in human history. It's not just an increase in disasters, but a reflection of a land preparing for a new chapter. What do you think the world needs to do to prepare for what is to come? In Matthew chapter 24, verse 8, Jesus says, "All these things are just the beginning of birth pains." What we are witnessing is not the end, but the beginning of a global transformation. We are living in a world where the signs are becoming more evident every day. And although we do not know exactly what is to come, we can perceive that the global scenario is changing rapidly and drastically. The destruction in Los Angeles is just a reflection of what may happen in many other parts of the world if we are not attentive. Have you realized how each new disaster leads us to a deeper awareness of the fragility of life and the importance of spiritual preparation? As we observe the fires devastating an entire city, we must also reflect on what this means for humanity. Could these natural disasters be a way to awaken us to something greater? The Bible warns us to be prepared, to be watchful, and not to be surprised when the end comes. How much time do you think we have to prepare before these prophecies are fulfilled? The events we see today make us question, are we ready for what is to come? The feeling of helplessness in front of the fires, the fire that consumes everything, reminds us of the fragility of life and the urgency of being prepared, not just physically but spiritually. How are you preparing for the future? Have you reflected on the importance of spiritual preparation in a world that is becoming more unpredictable? These fires in Los Angeles are more than just a local tragedy. They are a wake-up call for all of us. They are part of a broader scenario of natural disasters that are becoming more and more frequent. The earth is shaking, and according to the scriptures, these signs of destruction are just the beginning of the pains. Do you agree that these natural disasters are signs of a global transformation that is taking place? Now, more than ever, it is essential that we prepare for the difficult times that may lie ahead. Spiritual preparation is one of the most effective ways to face what is to come. It's not just about physically surviving these disasters, but being ready in spirit, strengthening our faith and trust in God. What are you doing to strengthen your faith in times of uncertainty? As we see, the signs are clear. What remains for us is to act with wisdom and preparation. The next topic will bring a deep reflection on the devastating impact of these disasters on the city of Los Angeles and how it connects with the global reality. Don't miss the next chapter, where we will examine how the disasters in Los Angeles affect the city and the world as a whole. If you want to better understand how to spiritually prepare for difficult times, don't forget to check out our ebook on the signs of the end times. The link is in the first pinned comment. Download the ebook now and get more prepared for what comes next. Now, let's dive into the devastating impact the fires caused in Los Angeles and what this may mean for the future of major cities around the world. Devastating impact in the city of Los Angeles. When the fire finally began to subside, the horrors of the destruction became more evident with each passing day. What was once a vibrant city, full of life, was now submerged in ashes and rubble. Los Angeles, one of the largest and most influential cities in the world, saw its streets turn into war zones. Thousands of properties were destroyed, and with them, many stories of families, communities, and even businesses that for years had shaped the local landscape. Imagine what it would be like to see your home, your work, and everything you know simply consumed by fire in the snap of a finger. How would you feel? The magnitude of the destruction is hard to imagine. Houses, schools, stores, churches, hospitals. All the pillars of everyday life were devastated. For many, it wasn't just the loss of material possessions, but the loss of a sense of security that is often taken for granted. The fire left nothing behind but ruins. How much does it cost for an individual or family to rebuild their life after losing everything they've achieved? Estimates of economic losses have already surpassed billions of dollars. Billions. This number reflects not only the value of lost properties, but also the economic impact on the entire city. From small businesses to large corporations, everyone felt the effects of this catastrophe. Tourism, one of Los Angeles' largest sources of income, was also severely impacted, as many tourist attractions were out of operation. Have you thought about how a natural disaster can transform a local and global economy? How can the cost of a catastrophe change the lives of millions of people? The economic effects go far beyond immediate losses. Many residents who lost their homes now face the challenge of rebuilding their lives, with a cost that may take years to cover. What happens when a large number of people are displaced from their homes and forced to start from scratch? For many, the answer is not simple. The loss of a home is a deep emotional pain, but when combined with financial uncertainty, the challenges become even greater. Are we really prepared to deal with the economic impact of a large-scale natural disaster? What can we do to mitigate the economic effects of an event like this? In addition to the physical and economic losses, Los Angeles also faced a public health crisis. The dense smoke that covered the city for days made breathing a difficult task for everyone. Those who already suffered from respiratory illnesses found a new enemy in the toxic smoke that spread across the city. The sky, which is normally bright blue, was now a red veil, as if the atmosphere itself were crying for the city's pain. Have you ever thought about how a natural disaster can affect people's health? Not only physically, but emotionally as well. How many lives are touched by an event of this magnitude? The air quality in Los Angeles deteriorated considerably. The smoke from the flames spread for miles, making the streets not only uninhabitable, but also dangerous to health. Images of deserted streets and people wearing masks to try to protect themselves from the toxic air became common in the weeks following the peak of the fires. Doesn't it seem like a science fiction scene? But this was the reality for thousands of families in Los Angeles during this tragedy. How would it be to live in a world where the air we breathe becomes a threat to our health? As many tried to protect themselves from the smoke and heat, public health authorities faced a monumental task. How can medical care for the injured be provided, while simultaneously combating the deterioration of the health of thousands due to air pollution? How can the safety of a population be ensured when, unknowingly, they are already being affected in invisible ways? How can health infrastructure be prepared for a large-scale event like this? Are we really prepared to deal with a global public health crisis? The psychological impact also cannot be underestimated. Living in a city where the air is thick with smoke and the sky glows red brings not just physical, but also emotional impact. The feeling of helplessness, being trapped in a scenario you cannot control, can be devastating. The residents of Los Angeles, who were used to seeing their vibrant and bustling neighborhoods, now found themselves surrounded by a dense cloud that blocked their vision of a clear future. What happens to the human mind when we see our world transformed into a crisis scene? How do we recover from such a traumatic experience? But what can we learn from this disaster? How can we prepare for the devastating impact that natural disasters like this have on our communities, economies, and public health? Do you think the world is really prepared to deal with the impact of large catastrophes like these? How can we be better prepared for the future? As Los Angeles begins to rebuild, the lessons from this disaster still resonate. The city was tested in a way that few imagined possible, and now it has the opportunity to rebuild stronger, more resilient, and more aware than ever. Recovery will be slow and costly, but perhaps amid all the pain and suffering, the city may find a new way to face future challenges. What can we do to prevent these crises from repeating in other cities around the world? How can we unite to strengthen infrastructure and disaster preparedness? Now that we have reflected on the devastating impact in Los Angeles, let's look at an even broader phenomenon. Natural disasters are not an isolated phenomenon, but part of a growing pattern that we see around the world. Get ready for the next topic, where we will discuss how natural disasters have become a global phenomenon and what we can do to face them. If you haven't liked the video yet, do it now so that this video reaches more people. Natural disasters, a global phenomenon. In recent years, we have witnessed an alarming increase in the frequency and intensity of natural disasters in various parts of the world. What used to be rare and isolated events are now occurring with an alarming regularity. Earthquakes, storms, hurricanes, floods, extreme droughts, and wildfires are becoming more common, and the damage they cause is not only physical but emotional, social, and economic. It feels like a science fiction movie, but reality is showing us that these events are becoming more common in our world. How are you preparing for what may come? Earthquakes, for example, have become more frequent, affecting regions that were normally unaffected by such disasters. Recently, devastating earthquakes occurred in places like Turkey, Japan, and even in more distant regions like Haiti. What is even more alarming is the magnitude of these events, which seems to be increasing. Lands that were once considered stable are now moving with overwhelming force, destroying everything in their path. Cities are turned into rubble, families are uprooted, and the world seems to be in a constant state of imbalance. What happens to a country when a high-magnitude earthquake hits its major cities? How does a community rebuild after such a devastating disaster? But it's not just earthquakes that the world is dealing with. More intense and frequent storms, such as hurricanes and cyclones, are becoming increasingly common. Recently, hurricanes devastated the United States coast, leaving behind not just physical destruction but deep emotional pain. The storms seem to be intensifying, and with that, the devastation they cause. These storms can hit entire regions, sweeping away homes, businesses, and even lives. With each new hurricane, we are reminded that we are not in control of nature, but rather at the mercy of its force. What do we need to do to prepare for these catastrophes? Have we reflected enough on the impact they have on our lives? The relationship between these disasters and the prophecies of Matthew chapter 24 is something we cannot ignore. Jesus, in his words, clearly spoke about the signs of the times, warning us about the events that would precede the end times. He mentioned wars, rumors of wars, famine, and earthquakes as signs that the earth was entering an era of great tribulation. Do you think we are living these signs today? How can the world deal with the frequency of catastrophes like these? In Matthew chapter 24, verse 7, Jesus says, "There will be earthquakes in various places, and there will be famines and plagues." And as we look at the world today, we see these signs being fulfilled right before our eyes. The increase in earthquakes and storms in areas that were once stable, along with other natural disasters, can be seen as a confirmation of these prophecies. Does it seem like we are living the signs of the times? What does this mean for us as individuals and as a society? These disasters are not just coincidences, but a manifestation of a world that is suffering. Nature is out of balance, and this is reflected in the events we witness every day. The oceans are more turbulent, the lands are more unstable, and the climate is more unpredictable. Climate change, caused by human activities, has also aggravated the situation. Is the earth really suffering, as the scriptures warned us? What can we do to prevent this deterioration from getting worse? The increase in natural disasters, therefore, should not be seen just as an environmental or geological problem, but as a spiritual sign as well. Many believe that these events are directly connected with the fulfillment of the prophecies of Matthew, where Jesus warned about the suffering that would precede the end times. The signs are everywhere, and the question we must ask ourselves is, are we really prepared to face what is coming next? How can we spiritually prepare for the challenges ahead? The answer to this question lies in our ability to understand what is happening around us and in our preparation, not only physically but primarily spiritually. How can we prepare to face what will happen to us in the next years? What does God tell us about how to deal with the signs of the end? As natural disasters increase, it is essential that we begin to reflect on our relationship with the world we live in. What should we do to improve our connection with nature in order to reduce the impact of disasters? How can we live in a way that respects the earth instead of aggravating its deterioration? Now that we understand the increase of these disasters, let's look at an even more specific sign: the increase in earthquakes. They are not just a consequence of nature, but also a sign that warns us about the times we are living in. In the next topic, we will discuss the increase in earthquakes and how this phenomenon connects with the fulfillment of prophecies. Don't miss the next chapter, where we will examine recent events and how they relate to the end times. Leave your comment about what you think of all these catastrophes we have been living through. How do you see the connection between natural disasters and the prophecies in Matthew chapter 24? The increase in earthquakes, signs of the end. The earth has never been an immutable and static sphere. Since humanity first walked the earth, the planet has shown signs that it is in constant transformation. But recently, one of the most alarming manifestations of this change has been the dramatic increase in earthquakes in various parts of the world. Have you ever stopped to think how the earth is changing so rapidly and in such a radical way? The earth is shaking in ways we have never seen before, and the frequency and intensity of earthquakes seem to be increasing at an alarming rate. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 7, Jesus gave a clear and direct warning. There will be earthquakes in different places. These words have echoed through the centuries, and as natural disasters become more frequent, we can begin to see how these prophecies are becoming real. When Jesus spoke of these signs, he was referring to events that would take place before the great day of judgment and renewal. Are we really living the fulfillment of Matthew's prophecies today? In recent times, we have seen devastating earthquakes in various parts of the world. In places where seismic risk was once minimal, the earth began to tremble more frequently, as if warning that something much larger was coming. Haiti, Japan, Chile, Turkey, Mexico, and the United States have been hit by violent earthquakes, and this is no longer a rarity. Can you feel the anxiety that grows with every new earthquake, every new news of destruction? How does this reality affect us spiritually? As science advances, we are beginning to understand more about what causes these phenomena, but something still escapes us. Is there something much bigger behind all this seismic activity? Could the earth be preparing for a great event? According to the scriptures, these earthquakes are signs that we are entering a new phase in the history of humanity. What do you think? Is this increase in earthquakes a clear sign of the final times? The increase in the frequency and intensity of earthquakes is a reflection of a global imbalance. It's not just a natural phenomenon, but an indication that something is happening to our planet on a deep level. It's as if the earth is reacting to something beyond human comprehension. What once seemed like a rare event has now become part of the daily global news. The world is no longer the same, and as the scriptures predicted, we are being called to reflect on the times we are living in. It seems that as we progress through the 21st century, natural disasters are becoming more frequent and intense. The number of earthquakes recorded every year seems to be growing. In 2010, for example, the earthquake in Haiti devastated the capital, Port-au-Prince, leaving an entire nation in ruins. In 2011, Japan faced a 9.0 magnitude earthquake, which triggered the Fukushima nuclear disaster. These are just two examples, but there are many others around the world, with tremors that are more intense, more frequent, and more deadly. How many more earthquakes will it take to wake us up to the reality of what is happening? According to Matthew chapter 24, verse 7, these calamities are not mere coincidences, but signs of the times. Jesus warned that earthquakes in different places would be one of the marks of the end times. The increasing frequency of earthquakes, as we are witnessing, may be a direct reflection of this prophecy. These signs are not just a warning to the earth, but also a call for all of us to reflect on our faith, our behavior, and our relationship with God. Can you feel the earth is saying something? What are these signs sending us? But it's not just the earthquakes that have been drawing our attention. We are also seeing the instability of tectonic plates, which increases the possibility of higher magnitude earthquakes. These natural events remind us of our fragility before the grandeur of creation. Even with all our technological advancements, humanity cannot control what happens inside the earth. How can we take the signs of the end more seriously and pay closer attention to our relationship with the Creator? The scriptures clearly tell us what we should do in times like these. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 42, Jesus warns us to watch. We are called to stay alert, not just to the physical signs, but also the spiritual ones. The increase in earthquakes is a sign that we are getting closer to a final event, and it invites us to reflect on what we are doing with the time we have left. What have we done with our lives and the opportunities we've been given? Are we really living according to what God has taught us? Now, more than ever, it is crucial to prepare spiritually. The earth is shaking, and this is a reminder that time is running out. We are living in an era where prophecies are being fulfilled before our eyes, and as Jesus warned us, we must be prepared. The increase in earthquakes is just one of many signs pointing us to what is to come. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, Do it now so you don't miss the next chapters. Let's continue exploring the signs of the times, and the next topic will address extreme weather phenomena like El Niño and La Nina, and how these phenomena connect with the apocalyptic signs predicted in the scriptures. Don't miss the next part of this video, where we will examine extreme weather phenomena and how they may be another sign of the final times. Extreme weather phenomena, El Niño and La Nina. El Niño and La Nina weather phenomena have been occurring more frequently and intensely, and their repercussions on the global climate have been devastating. These two phenomena, part of the Earth's natural climate cycle, have the power to cause global-scale disasters, including severe droughts, floods, stronger hurricanes, and even extreme changes in the seasons. Did you know that the planet's climate can be affected by phenomena that arise thousands of miles away from your home? El Niño, which occurs when the waters of the equatorial Pacific become abnormally warm, can cause droughts in some regions of the world and torrential rains in others. This imbalance in the global climate can lead to a series of disasters, from food scarcity due to lack of rain to devastating floods that affect entire cities. One example of this is the impact El Niño had on various areas of Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia, where agriculture was severely affected, causing food shortages and human suffering. How can the lack of water impact so deeply the lives of millions of people around the world? What would happen to a nation if its water resources were scarce? On the other hand, the La Nina phenomenon, when the waters of the Pacific cool, has the opposite effect, causing torrential rains, stronger cyclones, and floods. These extreme climate conditions not only affect agriculture and crops, but also compromise the infrastructure of many regions. Southeast Asian countries, for example, have been hit by catastrophic floods during La Nina events, destroying entire cities and forcing millions to flee their homes. When the Earth doesn't respond as we expect, how do we prepare to face the force of nature in a way that is not just survival, but resilience? These extreme weather phenomena have increasingly been seen as part of the birth pangs in nature mentioned in Biblical Prophecies. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 8, Jesus speaks of wars, rumors of wars, famine, pestilence, and earthquakes, but he also mentions that before the end, the world would undergo these climatic transformations, and that the earth would give signs that the end times were near. Do you think these climatic signs are warning us about a dissolving world, preparing us for what is to come? How do we live with the constant threat of climatic disasters? The connection between these events and the prophecies is something we cannot ignore. The increasing frequency and intensity of phenomena like El Niño and La Nina, as well as the disasters they cause, could be a reflection of what was predicted thousands of years ago. The Earth is reacting to a change that is partly induced by humans and partly as a reflection of divine warnings about the end times. What is the Earth trying to tell us with such agitation in its climate? Are we listening? These climate disasters do not only affect the directly impacted regions, but they also have global repercussions. They provoke mass displacements of people, generate humanitarian and financial crises, and, above all, make the world rethink its relationship with nature and with the resources God entrusted to us. The severe droughts and floods caused by El Niño and La Nina are not just climatic catastrophes, but also calls for deep reflection on how we are handling the environment. Have you ever stopped to think how human actions are worsening the global climate situation? What can we do to modify our impact on Earth? In today's world, it is evident that we are facing an increase in extreme weather phenomena. Climate change, driven both by natural causes and human actions, is shaping the future of our planet in unpredictable ways. The increasing frequency of these climate disasters can be interpreted as one of the clearest signs that we are entering a new era, an era of great transformations and challenges. How are we preparing for a future where extreme climatic phenomena will be the norm and not the exception? Now, with the global climate in constant transformation, the question is inevitable. Are we truly prepared to deal with the consequences of extreme climate phenomena? How can we, as a society, work together to minimize the impacts of these changes and build a safer future for everyone? The answer to these questions may be the starting point for us to understand that preparation for climate disasters is an urgent and vital matter. What should we do to prepare for what is to come? Are we preparing enough? If you haven't already, hit the like button now and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with the upcoming episodes of this video. We'll continue exploring the signs of the times, and in the next topic, we'll look at the intensification of natural disasters. What does this mean for us? Are we really witnessing the fulfillment of the prophecies? In the next topic, we will examine how the intensification of natural disasters is a clear sign of the final times. Stay tuned. The intensification of natural disasters. In recent years, the world has witnessed an alarming intensification of natural disasters. Stronger hurricanes, fires consuming vast areas, and relentless heat waves are becoming more and more frequent. What were once isolated events are now almost a constant in global news. Each new disaster seems more destructive than the previous one, and the impacts are increasingly visible all over the world. Have you ever stopped to think that what is happening with nature could be a warning sign for us? How does the earth react to the changes we have made in our behavior? Hurricanes, which used to be rare and localized in certain regions, now hit entire countries, destroying everything in their path. Devastating hurricanes like Hurricane Katrina in 2005 and Hurricane Maria in 2017 are just a few examples of what humanity has been facing. These phenomena are no longer predictable, and the increase in their intensity is a clear reflection of an unstable global climate. Heat waves, which were once just an inconvenience during summer, have now become a public health threat, reaching extreme levels and forcing millions to seek relief in the shade or in cooled spaces. Have you ever felt the impact of an extreme heat wave in your area? How does that unrelenting heat impact your daily life? Fires, on the other hand, are another clear evidence of this intensification. Regions that previously didn't face forest fires are now fighting against relentless blazes. In the United States, for example, wildfires in California have destroyed vast areas of forest and entire communities, with the number of fires increasing every year. The Amazon, which plays a crucial role in the health of our planet, has also faced devastating fires, resulting not only in immeasurable ecological losses, but also in economic and social consequences. How would you feel if your home were consumed by a wildfire? How would this impact your life irreversibly? These disasters are not just isolated incidents, but a consequence of a growing climatic imbalance that reflects the fragility of life and the Earth itself. The planet, which has already been overburdened by decades of environmental exploitation, is signaling that it can no longer bear the weight of human negligence. The increase in these disasters is a clear warning that something needs to be done, and nature is forcing us to look at the reality that we are vulnerable and dependent on the balance of our environment. Do you agree that the world is reaching a point of no return? What can we do to reverse the damage caused by climatic imbalance? It is impossible to ignore that these events are becoming increasingly destructive, and with this, we are reminded of our fragility. The life we've built, with all its complexity, can be destroyed in the blink of an eye. When a hurricane hits a city, when a fire consumes a forest, when a heat wave kills thousands, we clearly see that nothing is guaranteed. What can we do to protect our future and that of our children? How do we recognize the urgency of our situation and take concrete actions? Meanwhile, nature seems to want to remind us of our vulnerability. We are not invincible. We can make all the technological advances possible, but we are still small in the face of the vastness of the earth and the power of nature. These disasters are painful reminders that humanity needs to change its relationship with the environment and the world around it. We need to rethink our lifestyles and the choices we make every day. How can we start changing our habits to be more respectful of the planet and minimize the impact of disasters? Now, more than ever, IT is essential to prepare spiritually for the times ahead. The intensification of these disasters is a clear warning that the fragility of human life and nature must be taken seriously. Spiritual preparation is an important key to facing what lies ahead. What can we learn from these disasters? How can we strengthen ourselves spiritually to face the difficult times that are coming? If you want to learn more about how to prepare spiritually for the disasters that are coming, be sure to download our ebook. The link is in the first pinned comment. Now, get ready for the next topic, where we will discuss how spiritual preparation in the face of disasters is essential. How can we strengthen ourselves spiritually and prepare for the times of tribulation that are ahead? Let's explore this in depth in the next video. Do not miss the next chapter, where we will talk about spiritual preparation in the face of disasters. Spiritual preparation in the face of disasters. In light of the intensification of natural disasters, it is vital to reflect on the importance of spiritual preparation. We cannot control the phenomena of nature, but we can strengthen our faith to face adversity. The Bible teaches us that In times of tribulation, our trust in God should be our greatest source of security. Matthew chapter 24, verse 42, reminds us, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come." Living with active faith and spiritual vigilance is the best way to prepare for what lies ahead. Spiritual preparation is not just about seeking comfort in difficult moments, but also about keeping our relationship with God strong in all circumstances. In times of disaster, it is our faith that sustains us and guides us to act with wisdom and compassion. Are you preparing yourself spiritually for what may come? I ask that, after watching this video, you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share this content. Also, if you feel moved, leave your comment. May God bless each of you, and may our faith always be a beacon of hope, even in the hardest times. May He keep you and protect you. Until the next video,